Dear Ina, thank you for this sobering and thoughtful way to kick off our conference and your optimism. We will certainly continue to discuss many of these points you have made, particularly on the future of a rule-based, liberal, multilateral world order throughout this afternoon and tomorrow at Leangkollen. I will now turn to our next speaker, who represents one of the main pillars of the multilateral system created after World War II, namely NATO. Let me introduce NATO's Deputy Secretary General Rose Gottemoeller. Rose has held this position since 2016, but has a long career as a very senior position inside and outside the US government, where she was intimately involved in debating many of the issues that we already have touched upon, especially with regard to arms control, nuclear weapons, Soviet and Russian security, and other strategic topics. You can read more about her impressive background in the conference program. Please, Rose, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I must say, it's a rare pleasure to be the fourth woman to take the stage today, especially in our security field. So I wanted to begin with a big thank you to you, Ina, to Anne-Greta and Kate for flying the flag of security so strongly and for setting such a good example for me as I speak to you this morning. The Norwegian Atlantic Committee has clearly been driving the discussion on transatlantic security here in Norway for over 60 years, and the need for strong and informed debate has perhaps never been as important as it is today, and I think Ina's speech for us this morning really underscored the important issues and challenges, so thank you for so clearly outlining the challenges that confront us. I know that the Secretary General was very happy to join you here last year for the first time, and he asked me to say a big hei og beste ønsker to you this morning. I hope you will forgive me for continuing in English, but despite having worked closely with Jens for 2 years now, a wonderful 2 years, I may add, my Norwegian is otherwise non-existent, so I will continue in English. I am just as honored to be with you today in the Norwegian Nobel Institute, as Jens was last year, which is a fitting backdrop for our discussions. For more than a century, the Nobel Peace Prize has celebrated efforts to promote peaceful solutions between nations, and this is the very spirit in which NATO was created 70 years ago. From 1949 to 1989, NATO's mandate and field of operations were focused on keeping the peace in Europe. But since the end of the Cold War, the scale, scope, and location of our activities has grown well beyond what our founders might have imagined. The world in which we are now living is more complex, connected, and contested, and the economic and geopolitical shifts we're experiencing are bringing greater challenges and opportunities. This is blurring the lines between peace and conflict. A more assertive Russia to the east of the alliance continues to disregard international law and uses force against its neighbors. Ongoing conflict and fragility to the south is driving immigration and violent extremism. And rising economic and military powers, including China, are increasingly asserting their influence on the global stage. Across all of our societies, we are seeing challenges to the political establishment and a rise in the many isms that are highlighted in the introduction to this session. We also see the dizzying pace of technological change in both civilian and military fields. Again, I welcome the more detailed treatment of all of these challenges that we just now heard from the Foreign Minister. I know that when Secretary Stoltenberg spoke here last year, he talked about visiting the battlefields of Northern Europe and seeing for himself how technology can vastly increase the scale of death and devastation. Technology has always inspired fear and awe, and not always in equal measure. From the moment our ancestors first made fire, through the steam engine and the first industrial revolution, to today's fourth industrial revolution with artificial intelligence and 3D printing. I often tell a tale. I tell the tale of a young girl captured by the promise of technology who was growing up in Columbus, Ohio in the 1950s. One evening, her father took her into their front yard to point out a tiny dot of light that was traveling across the sky. That year was 1957, and that little girl was me. That speck of light was Sputnik, the first unmanned satellite in space, which was launched by the Soviet Union. For many Americans and Europeans, those were scary times, with fears turning on the march of technology and the very real risk of a Cold War turning hot. But, my father saw the world a little differently. He saw the Sputnik launch as an exciting new development, pushing the boundaries of science and technology, offering opportunities for cooperation. I was infected by my father's enthusiasm and have been driven ever since by a fascination with science and technology and the real opportunities it offers us for cooperation and what we can do when we put our heads together. We can really achieve a lot. International science and technology cooperation has shown us that again and again and again. NATO and all our allies, including Norway, are taking a similar approach to today's big questions. How do we navigate a more uncertain world? How do we turn challenges into opportunities? And how can we work together to make technology work for us and not against us, both now and in the future? I know you will confront these issues in your discussions over the next 2 days, and I very much welcome both the discussion and look forward to your results. For me, 2 things are fundamental to our success in answering this question. The first is our unity and our unity in the NATO alliance. And the second is our ability to adapt. Again, thank you, Ina, so much for introducing both of these issues this morning. I think we make a great pair here on the podium to launch the discussions. I'm sure you will have heard questions lately about the strength of the transatlantic unity. NATO is an alliance of 29 with very different democracies, with different cultures and histories, different geographies, and different points of view. And by the way, I want to underscore the happy news today that we hope soon to be 30 allies, with the Republic of North Macedonia joining our alliance after all accession procedures are completed. And we are planning to sign the accession protocol this week, which can then start the ratification process in Greece, in Skopje, and across the alliance altogether. It is precisely diversity and debate in the alliance that make us stronger. I trust that you've all heard the saying that 2 heads are better than 1. Well, imagine how much stronger we are when we put our 29 heads together, not to mention our resources, capabilities, and expertise. There isn't a single issue, from deterring a potential conventional attack to protecting our networks in the cyber domain, from tackling terrorism to keeping pace with rapid technological advances. For today's complex challenges, there is rarely a single or simple solution. Rather, it requires all tools to be put together in our toolkits, and all countries, large and small, have something meaningful to bring to the table. NATO has benefited tremendously, for example, from the Secretary General's experience of handling relations with Russia while he was the Prime Minister of Norway. In turn, he says, this was possible because of the strength and the stability that NATO provides. He was also quite clear, however, during his visit to Oslo last month, that Norway is the only NATO country today bordering Russia that does not spend 2% of its GDP on defense and does not yet have a credible plan to get there. To navigate in today's increasingly uncertain security environment, we expect all allies, Norway included, to invest in our collective defense in terms of cash, capabilities, and contributions. Throughout the years, NATO has demonstrated that when it comes to addressing common challenges and defending our shared interests, we stand united, and that ultimately we come together around our core commitment to protect and defend one another. From this solid foundation, NATO has been able to change and adapt as the world around us changes. This is our other great source of strength. From 2014, we have implemented the most significant reinforcement of our collective defense since the Cold War. At the Brussels summit last July, NATO leaders took over 100 decisions to modernize our alliance, boost the readiness of our forces, increase defense spending, and strengthen our capabilities across all domains: land, sea, air, and importantly, cyber. We proved our ability to respond to any threat from any direction through our Trident Juncture exercise here in Norway at the end of last year. And by the way, I was very impressed. I had an opportunity to participate in the Distinguished Visitors Day, and I wanted to say I was impressed, of course, with the exercise itself and seeing all the allies working together, but I was really impressed with host nation Norway and what you did to support that exercise. So thank you very much for that on behalf of all the allies. It was our largest exercise since the end of the Cold War, bringing together over 50,000 participants from 31 countries, all of our members, as well as Sweden and Finland. I wanted to mention, actually, my paragraph now talks about NATO's warm welcome, hospitality, and et cetera. I extemporized a moment ago, but I did want to recount a great story that, Ina, you mentioned at our December ministerial. I hope you won't mind that I bring it up in this setting. That the warmth of the Norwegian welcome was very literal in some places, with some Norwegians even knitting socks for the troops who came from the southern part of the alliance, not quite ready for the Norwegian winter already setting in November. So we were very grateful in any number of ways for the support that Norway offered. As we adapt to the physical environment, as well as the changing security environment, we are also adapting when it comes to dealing with the vast spectrum of challenges that new technologies can present, from electoral interference and misinformation to attacks on critical infrastructure and the use of drones. We often call these hybrid threats. We are building up our resilience and our capacity to respond to hybrid and cyber attacks by improving our capabilities and sharing more information and best practices. We have specific points of contact in all 29 countries, and we have cyber defense cooperation with more than 40 other countries and international organizations, including the European Union. Our Cyber Defense Center of Excellence in Estonia has grown from strength to strength, and our Rapid Reaction Cyber Defense Team is on standby 24/7 to help allies under attack. We have been crystal clear that a cyber attack could constitute an attack on our collective security and trigger an Article 5 response. At the same time, we're working to harness the potential of new technologies and remain at the cutting edge of innovation. All allies committed in 2014 to spending 2% of their GDP on defense by 2024, and to allocate at least 20% of total defense spending to new capabilities, research, and development. And indeed, Norway does fulfill that goal by already standing at 27%. Last year, we adopted a new science and technology strategy, and we continue to build relationships with the private sector through our NATO Industry Forum, which I see as one of the most important ways that we can build up our capability to innovate in this challenging period. This kind of cooperation can yield very practical applications, from enhancing digital underwater communications to improving medical and human performance in cold weather conditions and locating survivors in natural disasters. Again, I was thrilled to see this in practice at a field demonstration close to Trondheim during Trident Juncture. We saw how remote and unmanned technology could be used to defend the base and detect threats more effectively and more safely. This included thermal imaging, shot and movement sensors, and Black Hornet, the world's smallest surveillance drone. We also saw a cutting-edge 3D printing facility used to provide spare parts in real time to forces in the field. All of these innovations show great promise for saving resources and saving, most importantly, lives. So I think the direction of technology and the direction technology drives us must always bear in mind those particular goals. So in this challenging and changing context, NATO continues to adapt. And as we celebrate 7 decades of our alliance this year, April 4th, 60 days from now, allies are doing more together and stepping up their efforts, including on fairer burden sharing. In sum, if you want to know how I think we can best navigate this more uncertain world, we need to continue to stick together, first and foremost. Second, we need to continue to invest in our collective security to ensure that we are ready to rise to any challenge from any direction. And finally, to hark back to the old days in my front yard in Columbus, Ohio, we need to see the opportunities in some of the new challenges that we face. So with that, colleagues and friends, thank you very much once again for this opportunity to join you in Oslo today. It's an enormous honor to be here with you in this beautiful building and to recollect the proud heritage of the Nobel Peace Prize. So thank you so very much for this opportunity, and I look forward to our discussion.